please create a new notes page that's on the right side called Arguments For and Against Abolition and Women's Rights, and include today's date. Uppercase A, prison and education reform were successful antebellum reforms. Why? Lowercase a, laws were made that supported or carried out prison and education reforms during the antebellum period. Lowercase b, prison and education reform did not challenge the people in power, which were white males. C, prison and education reform were easy to get behind without being disruptive, so lawmakers would support these reforms and they knew it wouldn't disrupt things. They were bipartisan, which means all parties, both sides, let's say Democrats and Republicans, agreed with the laws. And as a result, making a law for prison or education reform will not hurt a lawmaker's reputation. He will get reelected, nor will it upset his political allies or his party. Uppercase B, women's rights and abolition were not successful. Why? No laws were made during the antebellum period. Women's rights came along in 1920 with universal suffrage, and abolition came with the end of the Civil War. Lowercase b, both, if successful, would disrupt the power structure. Eventually, if women and people of color are voting, white males will no longer have all the political power. C, lawmakers would upset the electorate, people, or fellow lawmakers by taking a strong stance. So lawmakers didn't want to take a strong stance against what maybe the people or those that supported them stood for. As a result, they would just follow suit with what their political party or their region agreed with. So it was very polarizing, meaning you took one side or the other. Okay, uppercase C, arguments for slavery. So in favor of slavery. Lowercase a social reason in favor of slavery is blacks or African Americans are inferior to whites, and slavery helps lift their status. In other words, civilize them. Both Hammond and Calhoun said that. A political reason in favor of slavery. Abolition threatened to overthrow the rich white males in power. Eventually, if people of color are voting, rich white males are no longer going to be in power. Abolition would lead to war or bloodshed. This was a fear, especially after something like Nat Turner's Rebellion, that the division in the country would only be solved by war, and this would lead to loss of life. Lowercase c, an economic reason in favor of slavery is if you get rid of slavery, which is a cheap source of labor, the country will not have a workforce to make a profit or maintain the economy. So Southern planters wanted that cheap source of labor so they could increase their profit margins. Uppercase D, arguments against women's rights. A, social reason against women's rights is in reality, women do not care. Women have other interests, and politics and laws are not one of them. Another social reason against women's rights is women need time to work in the home. They cannot concern themselves with the outside world or politics. So those are two social reasons given against women's rights during the antebellum period. A political reason given against women's rights during antebellum is women can't handle the power to vote. It's just too big of a responsibility. They're not educated enough to do so. Moreover, women do not care about politics. They don't understand government. So if they voted, they wouldn't be making informed decisions. And women's votes will double their husband's vote. So why bother having women vote when they're just going to vote the same thing as their husband? Doesn't make any sense. Lowercase c, economic reasons during antebellum against women's rights. Is it will cost a lot of money in order to set up elections where now double the amount of people are participating in the election. Okay, uppercase E, arguments in favor of women's suffrage or in favor of women voting and participating in the political process. A, these are contained in the Declaration of Sentiments, which was written at the Seneca Falls Convention in 1848. And what came out of that is a social reason for women's suffrage. Uneducated men can vote, however, educated women cannot vote. That does not make sense. Women not treated equally. According to the Declaration of Independence, one of the highest laws of the land, so to speak, all people are equal. Well, in the antebellum society, women are not being treated equally, so it goes against what the Declaration of Independence says. Political reasons in favor of women's right to vote is women must follow laws they did not make. That does not make sense. Women are not allowed to participate in the political process, so they are just following laws made by men. Does this remind people of what colonists were doing when the king was making laws and why the colonists got upset? They were following laws they did not make. Women are saying the same thing is happening to them during the antebellum period, so they should have the right to vote. If women vote, the outcome of elections better represent the will of the people, so it would be a more diverse and representative electorate. So the laws and the lawmakers would better represent what makes up the country if women can vote. And economic reasons for why women should be able to vote. When divorced, a woman must give all her property to her ex-husband. So that was a cultural practice at the time, and it left a lot of women destitute, even when they did not, in most cases, almost all, the women did not initiate the divorce. So because they did not have cultural or power within the antebellum culture, women did not receive anything if a divorce occurred. It just shows their status. Another economic reason women should be empowered with the right to vote is the husband takes any earnings made by his wife. So at the time, there was this disparity between how much a man would make versus a woman, and even at this time, if a woman did make money, she would have to give it to her husband. The hope is that through women's suffrage, this outdated cultural practice would come to an end. All right, thank you for listening.